Oh, here's Evan too. Great. Talk about timing.
Perfect.
Evan, thanks for joining us here last minute, but we are live. You are right at the buzzer there, Evan.
Look at
So yeah,
that.
we're live. Thanks everybody for joining us here. This is Recruiting EQ, episode number 29 already, which means we're more than halfway through the year, which is insane, which means we're going to blink an eye and it's going to be 2025. Sorry to be depressing like that off the cuff, but it's weird and crazy. And this is our month-end sales panel. This is actually the fourth month-end sales panel that we have done in our first year of doing this every Wednesday, and pretty popular stuff. Super thrilled to have all of you guys here as guests. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to chat about stuff with me and with each other. And for the most part, y'all are strangers, which is another fun part of this. It's a bit of a public meet and greet. And no one knows what's going to happen except me, I guess, a little bit. But anyhow, just a quick disclaimer on how this works. For any of you guys who are watching, you might be watching this on YouTube, on Facebook, or on LinkedIn. We are not on those platforms right now, so we have a limited kind of view. Your comments are welcomed. I love all the participation we've been getting, so please do comment. Any questions, any thoughts about what we're saying? When there's a lull in the conversation, I'll happily read them out. For the sake of privacy, I am going to not name you because I don't want to get anybody in trouble who maybe is supposed to be working right now, or not talking to a rec direct, for example, or whatever. I don't want to make it awkward for anybody. So we'll not name you, so you will not be named on the recording, but please do comment. We love it. And with that said, I would love to go around the room and have my lovely guests here introduce themselves to y'all. Shall we start with Jen?
Sure. Hi. Hi, everyone. I am Jen McNorton. I have my background is largely in the staffing industry. I was with Robert Half for 11 years, for example, Aquent for 6 years. But my last 6 years of my career have been spent internally at Indeed, heading up some of their internal global talent acquisition functions. I'm no longer with Indeed. I am starting a new gig in 2 weeks as the head of TA for a fairly
Congrats.
large org. So, yep, very, very exciting to be announced when it's announced. But
Yeah.
my
Heard it here
so
first, everyone.
yeah. So my perspective here is sort of twofold, right? I was in the staffing industry for quite some time, temp and perm placements, but most recently I've been sort of the client and on the receiving end of the staffing industry. So I'm happy to contribute however it's the most valuable.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah.
Evan, you just joined us. Do you want to go next?
Sure, why not? Yeah, first time here, so I may as well. So Evan Ogle, with 10th Revolution Group, formerly known as Frank Recruitment Group. Been here for 12 years now, and I'm currently a Senior Vice President of Accounts and Business Development. So started my career as a little old recruiter, the annoying kind that most people probably know of. Went through the ranks of managing a recruitment division for us. Realized that managing a bunch of 22 and 23-year-olds probably wasn't my calling in life. So I moved into a role about 6 years ago where I was just managing some of our larger accounts, doing business development, and probably just more client-facing, sales-facing. So pleasure to be here.
Client-facing, sales-facing. Perfect for our panel. No offense, 20-year-olds, but no shade to any 20-year-olds. Just maybe we want to sell instead sometimes, and that's fair. Thanks, Evan. Hector, Arda, who wants to go next?
Ardit, please go ahead.
Sure, thank you. Ardit Brahimi, about 7.5 years of executive search experience, started in the information system side, actually, and then very quickly worked my way into the operations, research department, aka talent sourcing, recruitment, and then business development. The last 2 years I spent actually training fresh college graduates, and it's been one of my favorite things in my career so far, where you get to see the talented individuals, or dare I say, even the potential that some of these individuals very quickly unlock so early on in their careers, and to be part of that journey, it's been one of my favorite things. So yeah, excited to be here and excited to partake in this Can't believe it's been 29 episodes, right? Wow.
Yeah, that's just this year. Crazy.
It's amazing. Rick,
Wow.
you're doing a phenomenal job as well. So kudos to you as well.
Thanks, Ardit. I appreciate it. I like to stack the deck here with people who I know and who like me, so that it's all nepotistic.
Sounds fair.
Thanks, Ardit.
Sure. Well, Rick, you're a very likable person, so it's that's easy. And Jen, congratulations on your new position. So
thank you.
you're welcome. So I'm Hector Quintana Smith, and I am actually, I can bring in another perspective to Jen's point. I'm currently in between jobs. I'm actually in the middle of a search for, a role. I have about 20 years of experience altogether in business development, account management. It's an interesting sort of background. I started with Accountants on Call, which was acquired by Azure.
Oh, that just took me back.
Right. I know. I'm aging myself, but I started. I was 10 years old, so there you go. So it was acquired by Agilon. They are now, and I think owned by Adecco, if that's still true. But I've been in staffing for about 15 years. I started on the front desk as an office manager and got promoted twice very quickly because my manager saw that I had a lot of potential in bringing in business, just working the front desk. So, and I'm really grateful to have incredible mentors who help me understand, the pitfalls and what to do and not to do. And then I spent about 8 years in advertising marketing and PR. I worked for the business journals, the Los Angeles Business Journal, Silicon Valley, San Jose Business Journal, a very good tool for all you business development people. And then I also worked in entertainment PR, which that was very interesting. So a wide range of experience, but all essentially in account management, customer service, and business development.
Amazing. Yeah, we've got a wide range of experience. We've got a Canadian guy. We have the West Coast represented with Hector. We got us East Coast peeps. So coast to coast, international edition. Let's dive in, shall we? I usually start off with just sort of a market temperature check. If we can go around the room. I don't know what you guys are seeing. I know the topic du jour has really been what the hell everybody's waiting for the election, it seems, to spend any money. But I don't know. It's kind of shocking. It seems like that was the general consensus, and yet now I see, at least on my end, everybody seems to be stacking their teams. Like out of nowhere, August has been the busiest month in forever. Are you guys seeing the same thing? How do you feel about what's going on in the staffing market, or as a business development person? The floor is yours.
Well, I'll jump in with what I'm learning when I'm speaking actually to my network of contacts as I delve back into the job market and looking at, a good percentage of my network on LinkedIn is, of course, people I've worked with in the staffing industry over the years. And it's kind of all over the place, as you said, but I think I've been through several election years and a few recessions and one pandemic. And so I think what I've been reading, what I've been hearing is that, well, first, I personally experienced in election years that clients don't like to take risks. It's just they're very safe. They don't want to make any moves until we know who's actually going to step into the seat. And I think from what I've read coming out of a pandemic and with, we have two very, very opposite sort of candidates running here in the US for the presidency, and so I think this year more than ever there's a lot of hesitation and sort of waiting until we actually find out what's going to happen. And that's from everywhere, investments, everything that I've learned. And then also I'll say that speaking with my network of contacts that yes, it's starting to pick up now at the end of the summer, because that's typically what happens anyway. From here until Thanksgiving, there'll be a big peak of recruiting and bringing people on board, and then nothing through the end of the year, until January, when budgets start over again for most companies, and then there'll be a slew of hiring starting again. So there's a lot of hope, but yeah, that's what I'm hearing and learning.
Yep, that sounds good to me, Hector. I'm hearing a lot of the same. What about the rest of you guys? How are you feeling?
So from a talent perspective, what I've noticed and a trend with a few of my contacts is the hiring process has actually gotten very quick, let's call it. Oftentimes they're looking to hire somebody right now. I mean, I'm a candidate myself, and I was in a process where they were looking to immediately hire somebody where, you hop on a call, right? And then immediately they want you to speak with the final decision maker. Now, at first I thought it was just a small coincidence there. But as I started to speak with more individuals, even with Fortune 500 companies, it seems like they're looking to hire very quickly. And I thought about it. I said, well, why is that? And I think, Rick, you made a great point earlier. I think talent, especially in a market like right now where it's starting to pick up, individuals don't want to make the mistakes that they made in the past, which is let's put them through all these processes, right? Let's have them go through these long interviews, and then they miss out on great talent. Now, with that being said, I also think there's a happy middle ground there where you really want to qualify people and ensure that they do have the skill set that best aligns with the needs of the position, but also as a company cultural fit. So would love to get everybody else's thoughts on that.
Yeah, I can also actually attest to that, having been a candidate who landed, the process that I landed in from the day I outreached, because we're all in the recruiting staffing world, right? You don't just apply, you then contact the CEO and the SVP of HR and all the people, right? From that day to offer was 3 weeks. And this is it's a Fortune 500 company. They skirted recruiting altogether I only dealt with the hiring leader, who I will now be reporting to. There was no recruiting team involved. Now they have a recruiting team, clearly, but for whatever reason, which I haven't yet uncovered, which I will, they really expedited the process. Now, that said, I have also had in parallel the exact opposite experience.
Yeah.
Where like I was, and what I found and what I'm seeing and my sense in the market is it is a little bit all over the place, right? But it also is really, what I'm finding is it's very industry dependent, right? So the industry, if I, coming out of Indeed, of course, I was like, oh, the tech industry, like that's probably where I should be focused, HR, technology, et cetera. Well, those processes, it's rough out there in that space, right? I went through many rounds of interviews just for roles to go on hold, or for the scope to change, or for there to be some reorg, and now the hiring leader has changed, right? But where I found the most success, and where I think from a sales perspective, if I put my staffing hat back on and I think about what I want to target, like where the opportunities are, I think it's in the industries that we don't typically think about as like the high growth industries, right? It's in the industries that are in transition and are in moments of change. So some of the like dinosaurs almost that have to pivot to capitalize on new technology and emerging technologies and things like that. Those are the ones that are going through change. Those are the ones that are what I saw are hiring. So that's, if I was a salesperson in the staffing industry, I'd be targeting these industries that are in transitional periods of time that they need to pivot, and they need the talent in order to do it.
Yeah, like who are catching up almost. No shade.
That's right.
The ones who are catching up. It's almost
That's
like
right.
Right? Like it's like nope. We're waiting. Oh my God, we need to do this yesterday. Bam. Like,
yeah.
We have to do everything super fast now to catch up.
I kind of want to. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Evan. Were you
I was going to say, Jen, I think that's spot on. I mean, I've seen 3 of the industries that have done well in the last 18 months have been public sector, healthcare, and financial services, 3 industries that are usually highly regulated and therefore probably a little behind on their digital transformations, have now realized, okay, we either move or we're going to fall entirely behind. So it's a great point. I mean, I think that's
exactly
something that
right.
I've certainly focused on as well on my side.
Also insert like retail and hospitality, which you would not like normally believed to be true, but they are also in some growth spurts.
Yeah. Well, also to that, well, first of all, I wanted to sort of piggyback on what you were saying, Jen, is that what I'm also seeing is it's not just by industry, it's also by sort of title or hierarchy, where you are within the organization. I was reading an HR report about, trends, latest trends, what's happening, who's the same thing about what people hiring. And, it's like 17% were, C-level executives. So they didn't really need a lot of people. But most of the people were in the entry level, or the mid level positions. Those are the biggest percentages where they were looking for new people. And of course, I'm a Gen Xer, and so what I've experienced in the last few years is that the that's another thing to take into account. The loyalty in terms of how long somebody will stay with a company is not what it used to be. Even 5 years ago, it's changed tremendously. And so I think that's one of the reasons why there's so many entry level positions, because somebody will take a job and they'll say, oh, I actually had this happen once in the staffing industry. They were there for about 2 weeks, and then they left because they found a job that was like 5 miles closer to their home, and they justified that in their own mind. And so we have to deal with that sort of mindset.
I think that's actually the generational point is actually an important one too, right? If yes, targeting industries, but there's this whole generation of boomers that are exiting the workforce, that are not that are leaving vacancies at pretty senior levels, right? So those companies and industries where people did stay, right? There are those institutional employees at these companies that have been there for 25 and 35 years are leaving the job market. And that's just going to open opportunity for some senior level people to come in and help, back to what we were talking about, like transform the leadership teams.
Yeah, how do you guys feel about that? While we're on that topic, like it seems like research has been coming out for a few years now. And I've looked at it obviously for Canada where I live, but I focus most on the US. So like even, US wise as well, there's a chunk of the workforce that is generally speaking in the boomer age, who in the next 7 years between now and 2030, just to give an arbitrary date, are going to hit retirement age and potentially leave the workforce. Some people are saying, oh, they may stay on longer, but COVID and post-COVID has shown that a lot of people in that age bracket have actually gotten hit relatively hard with health concerns and health issues. And so there is a chance that some people might leave a little earlier than age 65 if they can financially. But that there isn't really, like, it ends up being almost a third of the workforce, based on a lot of the numbers, may be retiring in the next 5 to 7 years. And there is not, the remaining 2/3 of the workforce. What we have on the other end is in the more junior roles, Generation Z aged people are by and large rejecting the traditional workforce in giant numbers and going more toward a gig economy, or like, various different things. I'll start in Insta, I'll be a substitute teacher on the side, I'll maybe teach a yoga class here and there, as opposed to getting into, oh, this is going to be a career job and it's worth it for me. So there's not that many people entering, that percentage is lower. So there's these gaps at the same time as we also have this other major tectonic plate of AI tools and AI, getting rid of some jobs. So certain jobs will disappear. That's a lot of moving parts that people working in staffing have to navigate over the next few years, with staff that's not senior enough or ready enough maybe to take over all the boomer jobs, but not enough people on the lower level jobs, and a lot of mid-level jobs disappearing. I mean, I know it's a giant topic of like several hours, but are we feeling the effects of all these things yet, or is the big wave still yet to come? How do you guys feel about any or all of this?
Yeah, coming from the information system side and working for a retained executive search specifically focused on C-suite level positions, it's something I identified very early on in my career, where I said, hey, loyalty is great and we love it, right? But is that going to cause something down the line where somebody maybe stays a bit too long? in a position where the person under them that deserves that position just as much, or that is ready to take on the next step and loves the company as much as the next person, are we actually holding back that individual now? It's a thought that I've had for a long time. I've had many discussions where pros and cons, right? But I think we're coming to the point now where we have to face that reality and saying, okay, there are a lot of moving parts here. And Rick, you hit probably like 90% of them in like 10 seconds. So great job. But I think there's a couple underlying ones where they come internally, right? I don't want to say it's the generational thing. I think it's more of the system that we've had in place and the company culture that we had in place, where staying at a company was the best thing. And I'm not saying it's not, right? But there's a happy medium there that I think we never actually put the right microscope, telescope, whatever you want to put on it, to look at it and analyze and say, right, how long should a person stay in a position before they should move on to their next checkpoint, their next career move that opens the door for other individuals, so we don't face this issue.
I think also
also
you have to take into consideration, which I don't know if you've talked about this before in any of your other. I've watched several of the podcasts, but the major. You're welcome. The major difference between the mindset of Xers and the boomers is that we came, or I'm an Xer, so I'm but even me, when I took a job, it was about how hard can I work, how long, how many hours can I stay, how long, does this have a retirement, what kind of retirement, pension for those who are older than me. But then the new generation, all their focus more is on social responsibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion. They want to be part of an organization, and as a person of color, that's definitely something that I look for, in an organization myself. But really the social responsibility aspect of a company is very, very important to the Z generation. As you said, they want to know that they're making a difference, right, in the world, and that they're taking a stand for something that they believe in. So I think that also comes into play when you're thinking about how long am I actually going to stay with this company.
For sure. Evan, how are you feeling about all this stuff?
I think that with you spoke about people leaving the workforce. I think a lot of it really we've seen. One thing that the pandemic has really allowed is it allowed people to work from almost anywhere, not have to be in the office, which has allowed, I think, a lot of change in itself. I think I'm in the New York area, and it is ridiculously expensive in this area to do anything. I mean, a cup of coffee is $5. So I'm actually seeing people who would have retired at a certain age not really have the financial stability to do so and stay in the workforce, even if it's just part-time, to try to earn enough money to pay for the cost of living. At the same time, those same people who can perhaps are moving to a much lower cost of income or cost of living area. And that's kind of something that's been afforded to them because of the remote flexibility. So a lot of movement regardless. I'm curious as well, Rick, to what you said about how it's affected in the next 5-6 years, with the younger generation being so different than the generation that's going to be leaving the workforce at the same time. So I'm a passenger in that, and I'm going to see how it all goes.
Well, yeah, there's a couple of things there. Hector, go for it.
I was just gonna say the other thing too that I always take into consideration. We had this conversation, Rick, the other day about, I love technology. I always have. So I've kept myself up to date with, the latest CRMs, lead generation software, AI, so I understand and know how to use it, but there's not a lot of people, again, from speaking with them from Xers and on, that really even know how to use LinkedIn or know about Sales Navigator. Yeah. So it's like, or they're kind of relying on sort of these old school ways of, which always it works. When I talked to you, I was, I managed a small team of people, and I would say you have to do a mix of everything as a business development person. You can't just rely upon, the phone or the email or social media. But if you are utilizing all three, and now AI, then that's really going to put, set you ahead of your competition, because you're going to be in the know. You're going to have the ability to automate your workflow, as opposed to I'm putting a note into my CRM today, and then I will write down on a piece of paper, I got to remember to call that client next week. You automate everything now, and it takes care of it for you. So you're actually time management, and that's something that I think, again, I hate to say the younger generation, but true. I mean, they're all about technology, and they won't even pick up a phone to call somebody. It's like, I'll just text you, you know what I mean? And that's something that I moved toward to in the last couple of years, is I would just ask a client, I'm like, hey, do you mind if I text you? Because everyone's sort of moving to that means of communication with each other. And so it's really about finding out with each client what their preference is. So I always ask, do you like email? Do you like text? Do you want me to, ping you on Twitter? I mean, what's X now, I guess. But what's your preferred means of communication? And then utilizing all the tools that help you, find success, get that, close the deal, as it were, because we're all business development. Well, that Jen was what.
I still am. In my heart, I still am.
Yeah.
You never stop being sales.
No. I love.
You raise excellent points, Hector, and I'd love to throw this out to all you guys then on that same topic. A lot of the things that have been talked about on these podcasts and the conversations I have with people in general have to do with adopting different technology, how that's changing sales outreach. There's a lot of, and this is probably another 5-6 hour conversation, so we can just touch on it wherever you want. But it's just like, there are a lot of people, there's a lot of noise now, right? With more automation, it means that you can do more outreach. You can have like sequenced email outreaches and whatever else. So your inbox can get full super fast. Everybody and their grandmother can reach out to like thousands of people within a week, right? So consequently, there's a lot more noise. There's less the personal element. I do the same thing as you, Hector, and I think that's the way to go, right? Is to ask people what their preferred mode of contact is. But there's a tipping point, I think, that we're reaching very quickly with the tools that we have. It is, if everybody can text, if everybody can do an email sequence, there's so much of it that it's hard to cut through, and it is stressful, annoying, like whatever. It does irk people after a while to lose a bit of that human contact, and it makes sales harder because you don't understand people's reactions as well. You know what I mean? So how are you guys feeling about this? Is this tipping point tomorrow? Is it 5? Is it going to get a lot worse? What are you seeing out there in this front?
Yeah, I'll hop in.
Go on, John, please.
Oh,
no,
sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah. I'm gonna. This is my perspective from the recipient of these types of campaigns, right? So, email fills up really quickly, and it's like delete. Like it takes a very. I have responded clearly to a cold email introducing some sort of staffing service or solution, but it's always been when I do respond, it's always because it's something they did their research, right? Like it was something personal in there, or there was some note that pulled out and made me go, all right, you deserve a response for that. Because the salesperson in me now, I'm critiquing it too. I'm like, that was a really good message. So, so in as much as I think the automated campaigns are fine, I think there is a very, very, very delicate balance of personalization and automation, right? Like, I think AI is not going to replace the human beings in recruiting or sales, but the salespeople and the recruiters that embrace AI and use it are the ones that are going to win. So on the technology side of it, I think I would encourage people to seek out tools that use AI in a way to make you more efficient and effective, not replace the work that you have to do, right? On the other side of this, and I don't know if this is controversial or not, but I'm just saying everything old is new again, right? I received during my search before I landed in this new role, I was working with a handful of executive recruiters, right? One of them sent me a physical thank you note to my mailbox, the snail mailbox. They put a stamp on it.
What's that?
Let me tell you something, guys. When I opened it, I literally was like, now this is how you're a good recruiter. This is how you do good recruiting, right? So I mean, I think that it's a little bit of an extreme example, but not really. Like I do believe that my phone goes all day, right? And I don't recognize the number, and what do? Ignore. 99 out of 100 calls don't even leave me a voicemail. So like how do you expect to connect with some? They don't even leave a voicemail. No message, no text, no nothing. It's just they're calling. And on the off chance that I do answer it and I'm like, yeah, this is Jen, and they're trying to sell me a staffing solution. I'm like, yeah, no. Right. So anyway, I think there's both ends of the spectrum, and you need to do all the things. But I do feel really strongly that separating yourself from what everybody else is doing by way of a thank you note or whatever it is, and using AI and technology to be efficient and effective. The magic sauce is somewhere on those two extremes. I don't know where exactly it is, but it's there.
You're saying that resonates so well. And I remember being instructed to make 130 calls a day, send out 1 million email. There's no way you can personalize your outreach when you're doing it at that volume. It's absolutely impossible unless you're working 26 hours a day, which we all know is also impossible. I mean, I think that it's invaluable to put yourselves in the eyes of the person you're trying to reach out to. How are they going to take it? I mean, I think a great example here, I'm going to use Rick. I get probably rec direct emails every single day, usually LinkedIn emails. All of us on this call, we can tell within 2 seconds if that's a copy paste.
Right.
We know. The second you get something actually, like as you said, Jen, they've done their research. They've clearly personalized this. They've taken their time to treat me differently than every other piece of outreach they've done. That's one, okay, I'm at least going to read it. Maybe I won't reply, but okay, that person's not just in the immediate block sender box, which everyone else is going. So I think personalization is absolutely imperative. And I think that if we want to be successful, we have to stop doing everything automated and make sure we're still personalizing a lot of the outreach we do.
I also want to add one other word for me personally is humor. You know, I like to use humor that's tactful, right? That's professional. You know, I'm not going to send something that's, you know, distasteful to a client, but something that actually catches, as you said, Jen, it's different. There's so much noise. How is your voice going to be different? And I would share with our, you know, green or newer business development people who are on this call looking for ideas, is that it takes 5 minutes for you to go into your CRM. If you're taking good notes when you meet with the client the first time, pull them up on LinkedIn. If you think that you're not being Googled or LinkedIn before somebody calls you, I mean, hello. I mean, I do it all the time with everybody I talk to, because I want to know, hey, you know, oh, we share the same, you know, interest in a nonprofit. You know, there's always something. There's a bit of news. That's why I said about the Business Journal. There's all these lists that you can go through, and hey, I saw that you were number 5 on the list of the business of, you know, real estate companies, or, you know, something. And those little things make a huge difference, because the client understands that you're calling them specifically. You're not calling the organization, you know. And I never sell, you know, in terms of, I like consultative approach and listening to my clients. I'm not going to go in and say, hey, do you need, you know, somebody, you know, the typical call or the MPC, most, you know, or skill market, you know, resume. But if you take good notes when you're first meeting with your clients, you can then refer back and say, you know, accounting, this person uses a staff accountant with SAP. I have gotten a large percentage of my ins with companies through giving them what they need. Because let's face it, they want what they need. You know, they want you as a business development person and account manager to provide them with what they're looking for, not, you know, the mugs and, you know, all that. It's great, right, to get that. But in the case of, like, when you're, you know, they just really want you to I always under promise and over deliver. That's the motto. Like, and then, you know, people remember you. They also remember the bow tie. So I always wear a bow tie wherever.
I can attest to the fact that Hector does do his research before even connecting to somebody on LinkedIn, because I will imagine that Hector, you saw that I was going to be one of the panelists on today's call. And Hector's LinkedIn invitation to me was not just a blind send. He went and looked where I worked. He made the, sort of connected the dots between the people that he knows at Indeed and who I might know at Indeed, and dropped the names. And I was like, do I know this guy? I must know him, because he knows the people that I know, so I must know him. And it worked because I accepted the invite, and now we're friends. I think. I think we're friends now.
Yeah, we are. We're best friends. We're lucky.
No, that's it, and it's a good point, right? That instant rapport by association, right, off of a little research, is huge. Sorry, Art, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to backtrack to your earlier point about technology and AI and what part does it play in recruitment. And I think we did a phenomenal job from the internal side of recruiters, but I encourage everybody to look at the other side, right? In this case, probably closer to Jen's world, our clients, right? How are they utilizing AI? What have they done thus far? And the common trend that I've seen has been resume parsing.
Yeah.
Where, for example, if a job is being posted, someone's not sitting there with a high stack of resumes anymore and sifting through them and calling individuals. Instead, most companies nowadays are using some sort of AI to parse those resumes. Again, not to play devil's advocate here, but pros and cons to that, right? Not everything goes on a resume. Not everybody knows how to make a complete resume. And more importantly, not everything should be on a resume. And I think sometimes we may miss out on some really qualified candidates from the client perspective, which is why recruiters are the best thing since sliced bread, because we do take the time, right, to sift through those resumes, and we provide that type of service that does not get in the way of your day-to-day. And I think earlier, Jen, it was you that said, well, AI isn't going to replace recruitment and sales. I completely agree, but I think there are certain parts we should give up. And there are certain parts that we should leave absolutely to human beings to have that human-to-human interaction and be able to really identify those top talents. We as recruiters, as business developers, as talent sourcers, we pride ourselves in, first of all, getting to know our clients. Just like we used examples on, doing your research before you send out that message, right? Doing your research on your potential client. Is this really a good fit? Are we a good fit for one another? Is my realm and what I specialize in going to be able to actually provide the level of service that you need, client? And I think if we actually analyze it in that fashion, AI is going to be our best friend because it's used to enhance our skills, not replace our skills.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And I think when you think about, now I haven't been on the staffing side for a few years now, right? But when I think back to being in sales in staffing and all of the administrative work that I had to do in order to document all my calls and schedule my next calls and follow up my things and do all of that, that's the stuff that if AI can take all of that over, and I'm sure it happens now, I just haven't used it, right? But if I'm on a call with a client and I have some sort of a technology that's recording that call, transcripting it, and documenting it into the system for me, and scheduling my follow-up.
It happens.
That feels like magical and amazing, and that's where it should be used, right? Recruiters and salespeople should be able to do and focus on the thing that they do, which is sell and recruit, not document and administrative.
We are there, Jen. But the thing is that we need to have companies and mentors who are able to train us on how to use it properly. And to Art's point, I have a personal experience to share with that, is that I'm on the job market. So I got a call from a potential client, and they said, hey, your resume, we were trying to parse it into our ATS system. And they were trying to parse it into like 40 different ATM. I'm like, wait a minute, what do you mean? And they said, but it fit in all of these, but 10 of the ATS systems, it was not translating properly. So I was thinking to myself, I'm like, first of all, ATS is applicant tracking system for those, who aren't in the staffing industry. And so I think that's an important part. If you're not, creating technically your resume so that it can be parsed into different systems, because there's like small ATS systems, and then there's Fieldglass and Workday. There are these huge systems, and so I could have, and I was really grateful that this person actually reached out to me. That was also very telling in terms of like, I know, because they're not going to, it's everything's standard, like reply. But I thought that was really awesome that this person happened to do that. But companies and recruiters aren't going to do that for you. So you have to, I have to understand that, I have to have, I have to understand those tools, use those tools, whether I'm a recruiter or a business development manager. I need to be able to communicate that so that I can get that person their career that they're looking for.
I think there's also the thing, and there's like a moment in time with this whole ATS conversation and resume parsing and the technologies that are being used, that the technology hasn't caught up to the technology yet, if that makes sense, right? So when you talk about, you talk about Workday as an ATS, it's not. It is not smart. It's not smart. No offense to Workday, but like it's not smart. It doesn't do the things that you would hope that it would be able to do. It's not just Workday either, right? Like iCIMS is same, Avature same. Like all some of the larger ATS systems are not quite as smart as some might believe them to be. So Art, to your point earlier of why staffing and recruiting can be helpful, I can just say, even in my experience at Indeed, right? We would post a job and get thousands and thousands of applications. I can promise you AI was not automatically going through those and declining them. I can promise you that because I've led courses in TA. I saw it. So there are, now you're in a position where these in-house recruiting teams are like overwhelmed by applications and resumes and don't have the bandwidth, the tools, the technology to be able to scan through them. So when time to hire is a critical component for your client, that's where you need to lean in, right? Because again, the technology just hasn't caught up to the technology. So it's not just us that needs to be trained and brought up to speed on the AI, right? It's like the existing technology infrastructure and tech stacks also need to be brought back up to speed, and that's going to take some time.
Yeah, well, and Rick, sorry, just one more point. Hector, you were spot on, which I was waiting for somebody to say, which was implementation. Having the proper implementation team for anything that you introduce, to regardless what the size of the team is. And the secret recipe, take notes, is having somebody that has done the job. Right? Somebody, I know usually they say, well, you don't want somebody that drives a car to make a car. Actually, you do. Because they'll know best in terms of what's comforting, what things they've liked, what they haven't liked. So if you're an organization that's looking to implement something totally new, have 1, 2, 3 of your, people inside your company actually test the product, take notes, and then start implementing it. That is one of the best ways you can get your team to be fully on board with any new product.
Right. For sure. And so just to tie some of this all together, actually, and then throw something else out there for you guys. Evan, you brought this up too, which is you brought up my outreach to you. And I appreciate that. But I also think that I come at this as somebody who got into staffing pretty late, right? I was trained on sales in tech sales by a California VAR called MacMall at the time, which was doing more Mac sales than Steve Jobs was, because he wasn't at Apple at the time, right? So it was a very progressive approach to value-added sales. I believe that recruitment is a value-added service. I think that the value piece is us, the salespeople, the recruiters, the whatever, because you could get candidates. You could just look for candidates. It's not just candidates, right? And then on the flip side, as a recruiter, it's not just the job. It's having someone who can give you benchmarking information, insights, give you so I think that there's a misfire sometimes in the sales approach that is used by, or that is encouraged by some agencies, which is very navel gazing. It's very much like, you want a candidate, I've got a candidate. You want a job, I've got a job for you. And that's it. And it's like, let's talk really fast and just do all this really quickly so that we don't have to get to know each other at all. And I think that is that approach is probably going to just be taken over by AI, in my opinion, because it is you're removing the human beings there. But as much as the research part of like knowing your client is big, you want your client to figure as a character in the narrative of the sales pitch or the brand that you're going. I think you also need to figure as the salesperson as a character. You need to put yourself in there and not take yourself out of the process, which is why I like doing video and audio recordings and blah, blah, blah. But like that calls to mind this idea of like automation is great if you're automating your process. But when you start automating your content, your branding, your message, it falls apart really fast and becomes annoying. Because I think we all agree, nobody cares. If there's no narrative there and there's no characters, it's almost like storytelling, really, right? If you, the recipient, aren't a character and the person talking to you isn't a character you can picture in your head, it all just falls as noise. How do you feel about this whole world now that we're in, where it is kind of a narrative, like personal branding is part of it? How do you guys feel how that can fit into the sales piece in a good, bad, ugly way?
Well, I want to jump right in with that because I think, having again been in the industry for a minute, as Jen was saying, you know, the card in the mail does go a long way. I'm not able to write, you know, 100 cards, right? If I have to make 100 calls, but when you finally get into that, you know, you have the meeting with the hiring manager, with the CEO or CMO or CFO or whoever, you know, the C-suite person is, the way I've always presented it is like, hey, well, I'd like to be an extension of your HR department, of your recruitment team, of your talent acquisition team. I'm not working against them. I would love to work with them to help you find this person. And it's hard because, you know, in my experience, you know, 8.5 times out of 10, it works. But there is the point, you know, the 1.5 of people who don't want to work with us no matter what. They feel threatened. They think you're taking their, you know, their jobs. They're worried that if they don't, you know, fulfill upon that, they're not. And so it requires also having that conversation with the hiring manager to say, hey, can I get an introduction? Can we have a meeting? Can all three of us sit down and talk, so that it's not like this person's just sending an email and handing them over to somebody else. You need to get that buy-in from the hiring manager, and you need to get their you know, okay, and to be able to like develop that relationship. And then you can have the conversations with, you know, with the talent acquisitions team. It's like, hey, what have you been finding? This is what we're, you know, and you can work together to do that. But, you know, it's not always going to work. You know, I've had such, I have stories, you know, and so, you know, but I think it does actually set you up, you know, for more success. And personalization, as Jen said, humans, you know, we're not going anywhere, hopefully. I mean, unless, you know, I always worry about iRobot, because I saw that movie and I'm like, oh, that worries me. You know, but we also put the input into the technology. We are the ones that are putting, you know, setting the queries up, setting the, you know, everything within the technology to make it work. So again, you know, your technology is only as good as the people who are using it and inputting information into it. And also, you know, but to Jen's point, technology needs to catch up to technology as well, because there's so much out there. There's so many people developing new things. We have the new and best thing that's going to get you, that it's noise. It's tough. It's tough to, you know, to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Rick, I really like this question. I think it's very thought-provoking because we don't really think about it as much, right? We when we think about personal branding, it's hard when technology is involved, because is it going to actually represent you in the most authentic way? And I think that the short answer there is probably no, because the reason for that is, how is it going to represent each individual one of us in this large organization, or small or mid-size? Love everyone. But how is it going to actually represent it's not. And more importantly, I think when we start utilizing AI for things that we should be proud to actually work on ourselves, then we lose our own identity, right? We lose what we actually believe in. I think it's safe to say all of us have some sort of passion for what we do here. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, right? AI, unfortunately, cannot automate that for you. That's something that when you get on the phone or when you sit there and write those 20 letters, it's coming from something outside of just monetizing things. It's the passion that you have for the industry, or even for what the client is working on that may be tied close to home for you or somebody that you know. Those are the things we have to think about when we look at AI. We should be able to say no sometimes. And I think I've been fortunate enough to be in a position where implementation fell on my hands. And there were times where I said, no, this isn't something that we should look at. And here's why. This isn't something that's going, but it works for X, Y, Z. Okay. Does it work for them? How long have they had it? Well, it's been a couple of months. That's not long enough to actually see it really work for that organization or individual. So I highly encourage everybody, when you look at AI, to have two thoughts. Is this going to make work easier? But at what cost? What is this going to cost us, myself, the organization, and the entire industry itself? And I think we'll say more no than yes.
Yeah,
for sure.
I love AI because I tend to be a long-winded person, and I create these long emails and I just throw it into AI, and then it gives me the suggestion. I'm like, oh, it's like it cuts it halfway down, and so it makes it easier for me in that way. So I love it. I think it's great.
I think as it relates to personal branding, this is, and maybe this is, I'm also a Gen Xer, and maybe this is just a little bit of an old school thought process, but I think you have to be very careful about curating your personal brand.
Right.
When I, a quick scroll on LinkedIn or Facebook or anywhere, and you start to see a lot of repetition in the videos and in some of the branding, and repetition is a slippery slope, right? Yes, it's good because you get recognition, but then it also becomes just noise, and I just scroll right past it. I'm not listening anymore, right? And so for me, trusting my personal brand with anything other than me and my reputation and how I go about my business, and how I develop business, how I develop relationships, that's all me doing that. That's not technology doing that. Now, if technology can help me somehow curate my experience in a way that does put my brand out there in a positive nature, I'm open to it. But if you're protective of anything, you, professionally speaking, you should be extremely protective of your personal brand. As to not it's like listening to the same, before satellite radio, there used to be just radio stations, and you would hear the same song no matter where you turned. It was the same song over and over and over, and before you know it, you're sick of the song, you hate it, you did love it, and now you hate it, you never want to hear it again, right? Just be careful with your personal brand and make sure that if however you're doing it, whether it's using technology or not, that you're extremely protective of it, and it's very carefully curated.
There's a
Facebook, and you said LinkedIn. Facebook and LinkedIn are basically one on each other nowadays.
Yeah,
especially
totally.
around topics. And I think also it's very important. I mean, I see people that are very, very well respected in the industry, very good at their jobs. I usually just say avoid a very controversial topic if you really care about your personal, because no matter how right you might be or how right your audience might think you are, certain people will think you're completely wrong, and it'll damage your brand when you go out to try to actually do your job. So just be very, as you said, ultra careful with how you put yourself out there and how you're viewed by the audience. 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a saying in sales, right? In all of it, no matter what kind of sales you're doing, is that people buy from people they know, right? But I take it a step further and say people buy from people they trust, right? It's not just knowing that person. It's that if you say you're going to be somewhere, be there. If you say you're going to call someone, call them at that time. If you don't call them, you send them, a message saying, hey, I'm not going to make this meeting. I show up every single time to what I say I'm going to show up for. And I'm honest, too. I think Art had said this, I'm not afraid to say no. I'm like, your expectations, Mr. Client or Mrs. Client or non-binary client is, this isn't going to happen. The purple squirrels, right? All those things. There's this is two positions in one person. And I think you have to be able to develop that relationship with the client to be able to tell them, look, this is why this position has been open for 6 months. And this is, so let's look at it in a different way. And how can we, how can we make this more of a one-person job, that sort of thing. And those kinds of things, you develop a relationship, and then they trust you, so they're always going to call and come back to you because you're going to be honest with them. You're the person who always showed up when you said you were going to be there. So all of those things, I think, are essential to the success of any business development person.
Well, yeah, I think that's good. It's a good point you bring up, Hector, as well, too, and fits in perfectly with what you guys were saying too in terms of personal brand, Evan and Jen too, right? Which is that you being an individual is a sort of an undersung thing. And if we're not going to be AIs, then it's this delicate balance of professionally being honest, being yourself, and also not being too opinionated or doing things that are like antagonistic or whatever, encouraging dialogue and whatever, instead of being hard line about stuff. So like being flexible and all this, it's a kind of a minefield in a way when Facebook and LinkedIn are kind of one and the same. Like people are posting jokes and things they like or whatever else, political stuff, that maybe they forwarded and don't even really know that much about. It's really, really dicey in a professional realm, right? So it can go the wrong way. But positioning ourselves, I think, to your point, Hector, as someone who's like, listen, I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. If you want to actually get something out of our relationship, I'm here to tell you what I'm seeing your competitors do. Like you can use me as an extra free employee whose hours are free if you're working on contingency to actually like ask me questions. I'm not going to give away the farm. I'll be confidential, obviously, about things, but I'll let you know what the trends are. I'll let you know what people are actually paying. Why do the people that I poach leave? You want to find that out? I'll give you the trends of why people leave a company or stay at a company for real, right? You can learn all that stuff from us, and positioning ourselves as the value add means you never have a rebuttal ever. That was my big takeaway from the tech sales days, was they were just kind of like, give me any rebuttal whatsoever. We don't use agencies. Perfect. That's why I'm calling you today.
Exactly. Yeah.
Why don't you use agencies?
That's great. Well, exactly. Why don't you probing questions? Yeah. Why don't you?
We had a terrible experience. Perfect. That's why I'm calling you today. We use your competitor. Perfect. That's why I'm calling you today.
Yeah.
We hated your company. You guys totally burned us, and that's why I'm calling you today. It doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
But it's just seeing yourself as the value add makes it a lot easier, because it's like, I don't know, I'm here to solve whatever problem you have with regard to what we're doing. So talk to me about your bad experience. You build trust by listening to someone who's had a bad experience. And then it's a microcosmic way of sort of showing that you can work through a problem with them. So you're trauma bonding a little bit with them on a first call even. So it's like rebuttals are almost gold, because you can sort of demonstrate your value. It's a lot easier to do that, to partner with somebody if that's your first experience, than if you pop in with a candidate they like and they don't get to know you at all. You're a commodity then. You can't just magically stop being a commodity. But it's interesting to hear your guys' perspectives on the personal branding thing. There's something you mentioned that I'll throw back out here. I don't know if you guys do you all have to jump off at 1 on the dot, or can we go another few minutes here before we?
I'm good.
I'm good.
I won't keep it too much longer, but there's something that you said that was interesting at the beginning also, Hector, about the Gen Z people. So Gen Z people are probably going to be the most adept or like attuned and susceptible to their brand being online and comfortable, weirdly, you'd figure. And yet not. It's interesting, right? Like there's certain things they won't do, like they won't pick up the phone as easily, like you said, en masse, a lot of them, until they get used to it. But then in some cases, they're a lot more used to having their brand online. And if they choose a company, like you were saying, that they want to be in, they want to feel like it aligns with their values and it has some positive impact on the world. But a lot of that, though, is that they want it to look good on social media when they join a company. Like if we call it what it is, on a personal level, they're asking those questions because they want to say they work at that company, because a lot of their social life is embedded into social media. So if the company's social media doesn't align with their personal social media, that's a problem for them, because now their friends are going to be like, what the hell? I thought you were blah type of person or whatever.
Right.
So the company's brand and personal brand need to align. How do you feel like that's pushing things from a sales perspective to attract candidates, or even just for people choosing what jobs they go to? Like, are you guys starting to see that push and pull yet, or how do you see this playing out? Because it's very different from the world that all of us Gen Xers are used to, right?
I say raise your hand if you've ever used a filter on Instagram, right? I mean, it's like exactly. We all have. everybody's like, oh no, I just have to change the lighting a little bit and make this more vibrant. I mean, I think that's an excellent point and observation that I think. How do we find the sincerity and honesty online? That's difficult because that's part of the problem. I think that could be a whole other conversation to have, is that how do you there's always the thing about online is that you always have somebody that wants to comment, whether they're negative comment, positive comment, trolling people. There's people who,
for some reason, what the hell, guys?
Yeah. So it's like I think that's part of the vetting process of when you're meeting with somebody. It's like I think we talked about this before we even started live. It's like, we got to know each other and we're best friends in 5 minutes. And those of us who've been in the industry that long, we know within the first 2 minutes of having a conversation with somebody, if this is somebody I want to continue a conversation with into 15 minutes. You're like, oh, I have to call you back, or but I mean, people tell on themselves, and we show ourselves all the time. I think it's just about paying attention, and then and so that is the important part, is what is the intention behind this person wanting to work for this company? Why do you want to work for this company? And it's a question that people ask. And these days, I think it's interesting because I've, like, every job I've applied for, I've had to take an assessment online, which in the past that's never happened. It's like Indeed, there's all these assessments. There's personality assessments. I've had to do math, just to get. And then you score, there's either a proficient or, I forgot what the other one is, but luckily I've been proficient in everything I've scored in, but you have to go through all the, the process. And I think there is a lot more of that sort of personality test being used on the front end. That could be controversial also. How do you really know these things work and that sort of thing? But I think it's through dialogue and conversations and asking those questions, the hard questions. One thing that I always ask, and Art, I think and then I'll shut up, is that I always tell people, which is it's a trick. I'm giving it to the whole world. It's not a trick. It's actually, I always when I'm working with my candidates, I say one question that you always ask a client before you leave is, you ask them, is there anything on my resume or in this interview that would prevent me from moving forward in the interview process? Right. And that's a very, people don't ask that question. Is there anything that you've seen today in our conversation or on my resume that you would have a hesitation about in moving me forward? And then the hiring manager has to answer honestly, right? Or they have to lie to you. It's like one or the other. They have to be at the end of the day. Well, actually, I don't think you have enough, experience in, this area. So that's the only thing that I could see, or they'll just like, oh no, everything's great, thanks. Then you're like, I'm not getting the job because they're not being honest with me. So, I think that's the other thing, is just really, again, honesty and communication. That's how you vet and find out who's really here to do the job or who's here to use the filter, right?
Well, from a sales perspective, those questions apply to this from a sales perspective as well, right? Like, you meet with a client, you have a phone call with a client, you sit down face to face with the client, Zoom, whatever. At the end of that call, if you're not closing them, right, you're not going to win the business, right? So, like, is there anything preventing us from moving forward with getting this contract signed? Is there anything preventing us or do you have any concerns with working with me and the insert organization here in order to fill your needs? Like that applies in every scenario as it relates to sales and recruiting, right? If you're a candidate, you should be doing that. If you're a recruiter, you should be closing it all the time. And if you're a salesperson, you should be closing it on every single call with those types of questions.
Exactly. But we get so nervous that we're like, oh, do you have any other questions? No, I think I'm good. Thank you. So that's the response that 75% of the people say, because they get nervous. It's like, well, what do I say? I'm like, so always be prepared. And I'm always closing. Yeah. Always be closing. Always be closing.
PTSD activated. Rick, I just wanted just quickly, because I think, again, you brought up a really good point in terms of with now the new generation sort of taking over and social media being such an important part of everyone's life, mine included. What happens if the companies personal branding or company's branding, excuse me, and your personal branding don't align, right? And how can we as recruiters that are representing both sides, what part can we play? And I think not much changes as long as you're doing your job correctly, right? In terms of you're not just qualifying them on the skill level, you're also qualifying them to a certain extent for, on the company culture, right? Did you get a chance to review their website? What are your thoughts? Did you get a chance to review XYZ? They recently published XYZ. Have you had a chance? Let me send it over to you. It's less of you probing per se, but more you opening up the channels for them to actually be open and transparent with you. Which goes back to Hector's point. People buy from people they like, people buy from people they know, and people like from people they trust. And in this case, our candidates, we need to treat with the same respect that we do our clients as well. Nothing should change. And I think as long as we open up those channels and handle everything in the most professional way, they will most likely see themselves out or say, actually, Ardit or Rick, this isn't a company I'm actually interested in. I'd like to be removed from the process. I've had that happen before, and I'm sure many of you guys here have as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%. Evan, you want to add anything on that, or I'm just putting you on the spot here because we have a little time left, I think. But no, I think we've lost him for a moment. That's fair. But all this to say, though, too, that Jen, you were saying that about and Hector and Ardit, actually, all of you. I think that there's the term. I like to bring this into one of my nerdy hobbies, which is dialectical behavior therapy, psychotherapy stuff, and DBT skills.
Oh, yes.
This whole thing started with me talking about DBT skills in recruitment, actually, back at the end of last year, before it was called Recruiting EQ, focusing on the emotional quotient and all that. And one of my favorite skills from DBT is radical acceptance and its counterpart, radical genuineness. And I think that, that kind of thing of asking straight up, hey, let's get out of interview mode for a second. Isn't there straight up anything that you're concerned about with me right now? And even offering that up and say, like, I'll be honest with you. Do I have any questions? Yeah, this is my one concern for taking this job with you guys or taking you guys on our client. Like, just offering it up, making yourself vulnerable and saying, like, I'm a bit concerned about this and this is why. What do you think of that? And then fire back and say, okay, what concerns do you have to me? It does help build trust quicker, I find, when you're the first one to do the scary thing sometimes, you know what I mean? And it's obviously not always the right move from a sales perspective, because you might say, I have this concern, and they may be like, okay, well, forget it then. But maybe you've just saved yourself some time.
Or from a candidate perspective, I actually, when I was interviewing for a job once, I went to the Glassdoor and looked at their reviews, and they were horrible. And they, in the interview, they said, they've had turnover, like 2 different people within. I looked on LinkedIn, did all my research as well. When I asked the questions, I was not a popular person, and I didn't move forward in the interview, but I didn't care, because it's like, if you can't answer these questions, why have you had 2 CEOs in 2 years? And why, are these people saying these things that, especially when I brought up the Glassdoor reviews, the person was like, well, Glassdoor isn't a reliable source of, I'm like, okay, well, thank you.
Awkward. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you for knowing you guys. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's true, though, like that. There, I think now where there have been so many layoffs, you have to ask those questions, because unfortunately there are a lot of positions that are open that are not projected for success. It's just filling gaps, plugging holes, because things are a bit of a mess right now. So it's like, if you're a candidate out there, totally ask all those questions, FYI, because you have to now, like, because you don't know if you're, you might, unfortunately, through no fault of your own, be set up for short term.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ardit, you were going to say I talked right over you there.
No, it was perfect. It was spot on. That's all I really had to say.
Well, perfect then. Great minds. All of us great minds. Evan, I don't know if you're still hearing us, but I think we lost you for a second before.
I couldn't figure out why I was unable to hear anything, and I realized my headset died while it was on my head. Of course,
That'll do it.
Technology.
Oh, I was just going to say that, Evan. Oh, technology. So that's just it.
Me a good minute to figure out. I'm trying to troubleshoot audio launches until I realize, oh wait, it's completely dead. That's why I can't hear it. Unplug that, everything works again. So, technology.
And we're back. Good old technology. Good old technology. Listen, I thank you all very much for being here with us. I know we went over time, so thanks for sticking longer. For all of you who are out there who are going to see this after the fact on YouTube or whatever else, please reach out to me in any case, or any of these lovely people to continue the conversation. Would love to hear from you all, and I hope to see you all next Wednesday.
Thanks so much, Rick.
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye, all.
All right. Thanks, Rick.